According to that, I am live. Welcome, my name is Hiko Simon. This is Tokyo Tonight. New camera setup. Sorry, I was playing around with the settings before. I'm actually using my iPhone as my camera tonight. We'll see how it goes, if it's actually any better than using the webcam that I always use. I've actually got that operating in reserve here. Just seeing how it looks. It looks like it's in sync. It looks a little bit stuttery before, but yeah, this is just basically using an app called Epoch Cam. Certainly the white balance is a lot better. We'll see if it comes out any better. But yeah. Anyway, doing that. Also, I am using my iPhone 5 as the screen controller tonight, so I reconfigured that as well. I look really red today. I guess that is the white balance. Perhaps it might actually also be the lamp. In fact, I might just perhaps if I just change that light a little bit. I'm still red, but you know. In any case, just playing around with the camera setup, seeing if this is actually clearer than the regular webcam. How does it look actually in comparison? I must admit, I am curious. I shouldn't be playing around with the technicals, but it does bother me how the Logitech 922, the white balance just changes all the time. It really annoys me. Curious which one people think is better, if any of them. In fact, I might just make it so that I can sort of show the difference, just out of curiosity. Boom. So if I put it here, so this is the regular camera. Is this better quality, or is this better quality? To me, it actually looks like maybe this one isn't as high resolution. Yeah, we'll see. Anyway, great to see so many people in here. Again, I don't have a lot of topics tonight. I really have gone off just doing a bit of overloaded with all the COVID stuff. I'll do some updates of that, of course, and I'll try to update on some other things, but we'll see how we go. Let's get into the comments, see who's here. Boom, we've got Super 9. Nice to see Super 9. Yeah, indeed. One Johnson as well. Dan H, great to see you. We've got Quint Ranked. Welcome. Who else? We got Steve Miller. Greetings and salutations. Long time no see, and excellent to see Steve Miller back. Yeah, wonderful. We've got Aaron in here. Great to see you, Aaron. Hope you've had a good week. We've got Lysander 45. Good evening. Shivas, not late. You've been on time perfectly lately, actually. Yeah, we've got AV84K. Great to have you, indeed. Let's do this, I say. I look red today, says Mr. Cordy Chep. Well, yeah, I guess I went for a bit of a run earlier, so I got a bit of sun, so perhaps that's part of it. I think it's just the different camera makes a big difference as well. Good morning, Edavoid. Indeed, AV84K, the test. For some reason, I don't know why it changes week to week. We've got Andrea Morboy. Great to see you. Do what Andrea Morboy did, just say my name, just type my name in the comments and it will flash orange, and that'll get my attention. I'll try to go back and focus on those 4 comments after each story. So yeah, remember, if you want me to talk about something, if you've got a question or just something you want to raise with me, I can do that. Yeah, I look taller tonight, different camera angle. Yeah, it's a different camera angle. It's slightly, I've got it on a bit of an iPhone holder mount thing, so I just want to see how this goes anyway. Guys English World, kia ora. Good to see you, Guys English World. Hope you're doing well. Yeah, censored again, AV84K. I don't know what's going on with that. I look redder and taller, so there you go. I don't know if I look whiter and shorter. Normally, taller is good. Redder, perhaps I can. This is the iPhone, so maybe this is what an iPhone photo of me looks like right now. I've never liked the white balance actually on the Logitech, so yeah. Anyways, just an experiment. Andrea Moboy is checking, and apparently, yeah, the Google bots are on patrol tonight. We've got Tokyo 503, by the way. Yokohama election spells doom for Suga. Yes, I'm going to talk about that. People generally don't go for the politics stuff, but indeed, that is exactly what is happening. So I am going to talk about that. We've also EDIR catched it at the start. It seems. Indeed, you did. Well done. Oh, in fact, it looks like I jumped ahead there. Because I see some comments there. We've got Quint Ranked, AV84K. Did CBS already apologize for using my brand name? I think it was NBC. You made playlists of Tokyo Tonight for most use. Is that okay? You can make all the playlists that you want. NBC, no, they didn't apologize, but that's quite okay. I thought it was hilarious that they did it, and yes. never mind. I did appreciate Aaron cutting that video of Screw You NBC. It got some reactions and some forwards on Twitter and so on as well, which I thought was quite good. So many thanks for that. But yeah, no action on that, and that's perfectly okay. That's really it so far in terms of my week. You know, I've been I got, of course, last week I got this second shot. So and I was just recovered from that when we did the show last week. Saturday I was out. This week's been pretty quiet. I've been following the advice. I think they're saying in Japan that if you take the Pfizer one, don't do intense exercise for 2 weeks. Moderna, they're saying 1 week. So I kind of took that. I actually waited 8 days. I went for a very, very gentle run yesterday, and I kind of wanted to do 2 runs. I wanted to go out on Friday and get another one done this weekend. So I went out this evening, and I must admit I ran really, really easily until like there's a big hill at the finish of a run that one of the courses that I do, and I pushed that way too hard. And I must admit I wasn't feeling great after. So that's probably why they say don't do too intense exercise for a week. So I should probably still take it easy for the next week. But it's nice. You know, going a week like deliberately not exercising just meant I was like in this room. I mean, you know, this is lovely here, but I was in this room for a whole week with you know, nowhere to go. So I was pretty stir crazy by the weekend anyway, so I was running as much for that as anything else. But yeah, there's a lot of good reasons not to go out. Definitely do not want to get sick right now in Tokyo. I'll talk about that a little bit later. But yeah, Tokyo Tonight topics font. I don't know what you talk. Well, maybe that's just because this is a super old version of Flipboard. It's on a phone that I've deliberately not updated. The great thing about this phone is because it's a completely out-of-date version of iOS that I'm deliberately not updating, it still has Soul Calibur. If you don't know what Soul Calibur is, I mean, I think I'll show you the home screen. It's this thing down in the bottom right here. Man, this game, is it going to show up? This game is like not compatible with iOS anymore, but it's like the best fighting game like ever to be released on iPhone. And Bandai like just stopped supporting it after one of the iOS updates. But yeah, this game is like awesome. So anyway, that's why I love this little phone. So I've sort of revived it for this purpose, just so that because it doesn't have the screen timing out. Yeah, Lysander 45. Your exercise has moved from walking a circuit around your hotel room. Yeah, that would get old pretty fast. To walking around the hallway. Moved from first quarantine to the second, which is a business hotel, teeny tiny room. Yeah, Crypto Airy. Good to see you, Crypto Airy. Like the handle. Don't recognize. I think I'd recognize the handle like Crypto Airy. So good to have you in the chat there. Thank you for saying hello. And yeah, let's just jump in, shall we, into what's going on. Really don't have any news here. Yeah, first topic. Somebody mentioned it before. Oh, maybe before I do, let's go back. We've got EDIR. It's kind of hard not exercising for a week. Got the second Moderna. Yeah, got the fever the day after, and then it broke the next day. That's exactly what happened to me. The day after I got the fever, and then the day after that I was fine. So yeah, that's exactly how it was. Andrew Mulboy, you play Throw Burrito today. Hilarious. That doesn't sound very safe, but I'm glad you've done that. So glad you found a way to entertain yourself down in lockdown there. New Zealand, by the way, sounds pretty awful right now as well. It was a bit of a joke at first that they had like 1 case in 6 months and they shut down like both islands. But it turns out it was probably necessary. It's getting crazy there. It's getting crazy in Victoria, getting crazy in New South Wales and Queensland. They're still it's funny how everyone's become so tribal in Australia and Queensland. They're looking at everyone else sort of going, haha, but that's not going to last. So yeah, the world of Delta is not great. It's funny. Delta Airlines must be feeling the same pain that Corona beer was feeling. I feel more sympathy for the beer. Anyway, okay, legit game for ages 7+ can buy it from Came Out of Town. I did not know that. Thank you for that, Andrea. Yeah, anyway, first topic tonight. Let's see how I can do that. I've picked some short topics, so I'm aiming for 3 by 11, but we'll see where we go. Pretty simple and straightforward. There is a mayoral election in Yokohama right now. Normally, I would not care too much about that. Yokohama is, of course, I believe Japan's second largest city. Osaka is actually number 3, as well as Osaka Prefecture is actually third largest prefecture, behind Kanagawa Prefecture. People in Kansai and outside of Japan say, well, Yokohama is just an extension of Tokyo, which indeed it kind of is. It's all mushed together, and it's actually like to go from Shinagawa to Yokohama is like 15 minutes, and there's no breakup of urban space in between. But it is a city, and it's a significant city, and a lot of people live there. And it also happens to be Prime Minister Suga's hometown. So given that the LDP, there's 2 elections coming up. There's one next month in September. There is the LDP leader election coming up, where he is going up within the LDP to be elected leader of the LDP. I.e., does the party trust him to take the party into an election, which should happen in November, where they will go up against a general election. And there's also this famous thing that whenever the Olympics have happened, prime ministers have always basically lost their, they've never survived out the same year as hosting an Olympics, I believe. There's some track record of that in Japan. So there's this talk about the curse of the Olympics, and it seems that for Suga, because this election's happening in his home seat, the candidate that he's backing could be seen as a reflection on how he's doing nationally. This is a seat that has to be won by LDP because it's where the prime minister lives. Well, it turns out the candidate being backed by Suga came second, or is running second as of a few hours ago, and the candidate Yamanaka, backed by the opposition, is like nearly up to 40%. So basically, even with all the candidates, it's pretty much a landslide for the opposition mayoral candidate, which again, pretty much people are talking about, okay, that's going to put like the end to Suga. Also, just on that, in terms of who's running, some interesting at the moment in terms of the most popular prime minister, there are a number of people not currently expressly running, like Taro Kono, the minister in charge of the vaccines. But in terms of announced candidates, people who actually want to run for prime minister, there are 4 candidates at the moment, and it is interesting. Again, there's a poll done by one of the tabloid newspapers, so taken with a grain of salt. But among party members, among the 4 candidates for LDP Prime Minister, the current Prime Minister, 11.9%. Kishida and Shimomura, 2 people who basically aren't very charismatic. They just keep showing up for every leader election, 5.9%, 1.3%. And Sanae Takaichi, bit of a hawkish right-winger, but one of the very few women in the LDP, and also a cabinet minister, or at least I think she was she was the former Minister of General Affairs, so quite powerful ministry, 81%. So she's really been off the radar for a while lately, but, and I honestly didn't really like her politics very much. She was kind of like extremely nationalist, almost like she was overdoing it to show she was one of the lads. For a long time, sort of extreme nationalist, frankly. But, she's kind of mellowed a lot in recent years where I've seen her in the press. I haven't thought that she's nuts like I used to think, But she's been totally off the radar. But all of a sudden, now she's polling 81% to become the next LDP leader. And that election result in Suga's home town, that buries him pretty much. So Japan could very well be having, LDP could be choosing its first ever woman prime minister next month, which, given that like less than 10% of people in the LDP are women, is kind of, it's kind of remarkable. Although at the same time, it means that those 10% are very high profile because, again, to try to, again, not to take anything away from the fact that they have some very qualified, obviously, women who are developing cabinet experience, but it's also clear that they are being pushed forward partly to give perhaps the appearance where they're really failing in terms of representation. They're trying to give the few women that are there, enhanced roles. Maybe it's paid off. I mean, she's been given a lot of responsible jobs and hasn't tanked them. So, who would have guessed? I mean, and the other thing, of course, with the national election is that, in spite of how bad the government's doing, the opposition is also doing terrible. So it looks like the LDP is likely to hold on in November. Although you might think, you might find that with Suga, they might be in more danger and lose more seats. So certainly having a new prime minister, particularly a woman prime minister, might be what the LDP needs to hold on in spite of everything, although I wouldn't want to be the Prime Minister right now. Final note on that, I just mentioned about gender representation. The opposition Constitutional Democratic Party, basically the Democrats in Japan, the leader of that party announced, big news, I've talked forever about how, like these parties can decide at any time for their proportional representation party list. There's the people who fill the seats in Parliament. If you vote for the party, when you vote in the election, you can select a local representative, and you have a second vote where you can choose the party you want to have win. And the idea is that, they'll top up the seats and the balance of the seats in Parliament to reflect the... I've just realised I'm going to turn the gain up a little bit there. Get it going so you can hear me a little bit better. Yeah, you have a proportional vote, which actually means that the total composition of Parliament will be based on the party seats, although the actual representatives, local representatives, you can vote for someone that you like, but who's not from a party that you like, and vote for a different party. So, the thing about the party list is they just fill it with people who are willing to become parliamentarians based on the party votes. And it's very common in proportional representation countries to have quotas, like lists have to be 50% male, female, or 50, they have age quotas and ethnicity quotas and gender quotas. But gender quotas are certainly the most common, and Japan doesn't use them, even though it has a proportional representation system. I think some parties, I think the Communist Party and some of the leftist parties do. So the opposition party is signaling, yes, we will make it mandatory. We will have a target of 30% women minimum on our party list starting in 2030. Should someone point out to him it's 2021 right now, so 2030, I mean, theoretically, if you think that people will be are eligible to vote from 18 in Japan, or they will be at least, in fact, no, they are eligible now. That means that there are 9-year-olds right now. He doesn't clearly. Why do they have to wait 9 years before they can actually have a target of? Any election they can just decide what the lists are any time. Clearly, I don't know. Maybe they don't think women are ready for the responsibility to be 30% of their party list. Maybe they want to be training 9-year-olds right now to be ready to be on the party list when they are 18 in 2030. So again, it's sort of like even the easy wins, they just find some way to like mess it up, the CDP for me. But there again, LDP with its 10%, one of them's like 81% favored to be prime minister, and the current prime minister is getting destroyed in Yokohama right now. So could actually be interesting times. These local elections are normally not interesting, but tonight's interesting night. So that's the first story anyway. Back into the comments. What's going on, comments? Anti-lockdown protesters indeed are probably cause more lockdowns. So EDI, I definitely feel your pain. I think I mentioned that before. The burrito thing we talked about. Let's scroll down. We've got Saint Sir. Good to see you. Saint Sir started. It's Sunday already. Indeed, it is already Sunday. Here in Japan it is anyway. Some other places it might not be. 27 AJ. Hi, I'm good. Hope you're good as well. We've got Kerberos Tenshi. Got your second BioNTech shot on Friday. Nothing. Well, that's pretty good, especially for the second shot. That's often when people feel it. Pioneer-san, good to see you again. Great to see a handle name I don't recognize, so I love it when people say hello. Odie Jr., boom, good morning, great to see you. We've got DJ Sunnyside Up, great to have you in here. Did you say Sanai? that's your name, Sanai. No, I said Sanai, but I'm not sure you'd want to be too associated with that, but Zenak, those timescales, indeed, 2030, they can't trust just raising the list of people to have 30%, it's not even very high, women until 2030. I don't understand that, but that's what that is. Anyway, so that's the first round. That's what's going on with politics. So second thing, I guess, what's going on with COVID-19 in Japan right now. So, basically, I suppose this week as opposed to last week, there were talks in the start of the month that it was going to go up to 5,000 in early August, which it did. And then it would continue on that trend and be 10,000 by the end of August. It's getting towards the end of August, and it's sort of leveled out, honestly, at around 5,000 to 6,000. It is still going up, but it's not above 6,000 yet per day in Tokyo. It's 25,000 nationwide. What is happening is prefectures other than Tokyo are now seeing record numbers. What's not being said, but it seems to me to be clearly the case, is that people are traveling for Obon. Right now, school summer vacations, and last week and this week was Obon vacation, when people travel to their hometowns to see their grandparents and to go and visit the family graves and whatnot. So clearly there's lots of people. Tokyo is emptied out, as it does this time of year, with people traveling all over the country. And it seems, in addition to Tokyo banana souvenirs that are like the best souvenir you can get from Tokyo, they are also delivering COVID-19 everywhere, and everywhere is now like getting record highs and crazy numbers of COVID, even in rural prefectures. And again, this totally looks very much like it's probably the result of people moving around, and they really shouldn't be moving around right now. Remember, governors have said, please don't cross, prefectural boundaries, but these are not like states, and there's no way to control movement. And people are just saying, hey, you're having an Olympics, I'm going to go see grandma. And they're doing that, and they're giving grandma COVID, it looks like. So, yeah, that's happening. And because, again, the number of people going out and about, the number of bars just ignoring the request to close at 8 and so on, the chief scientific, the Dr. Fauci of Japan, Dr. Omi, I don't know if he's actually a doctor or not, but the chief scientific advisor, yeah, now that committee is saying, okay, maybe now Japan does need to have coercive like penalties for breaking lockdown restrictions. So they're looking at that at the moment. Yeah, another thing that was kind of interesting is there's been this thing in Japan where, in other countries, you hear about companies making it mandatory, or hospitals making it mandatory, that staff have to be vaccinated to be able to, particularly service or customer-facing industries or whatever. In Japan, there's very much an emphasis, apart from the fact that in Japan the worker rights here are crazy. You cannot be fired from a job. You can be on a temporary contract that is simply not renewed. That does happen a lot. But the reason they set up that system for contracts was because a bottle cap there, was because it was basically impossible to fire people. I used to joke, at work in my last job that, when I was explaining this to foreign people, how hard it is to fire people, even problematic people or underperforming people, I would say, short of them actually burning down the building, you can't terminate someone for, performance issues. And then the employment lawyer who was in the room at the time said, no, actually last month there was a case where someone actually deliberately committed arson and was convicted of it, had a criminal conviction for arson of the office, and was still reinstated as an employee. So worker rights are pretty well protected here. So the idea that you might adversely bully someone or pressure someone to getting a vaccination, or threaten people with dismissal or not allow them back to work if they don't get vaccinated, under Japanese labor laws is just unthinkable. And so companies are not just doing this to be considerate towards the feelings of anti-vaxxers, they're actually afraid of getting sued by unions. And so that's why there's this real thing about emphasizing that, that you should really do vaccinations, but they are voluntary and they're up to you, and we're not going to force you to do it. So, given the perception that, making it mandatory to get vaccinations would be like the equivalent of bullying employees, I suppose if there was any company in Japan that was going to break that threshold, it would be Watami. You might recall Watami. I've mentioned on the show a couple of years ago. It's a izakaya chain with actually a member of the LDP in Parliament, the head of this company. They were famous for working their employees to death, and after working them to death, not being sorry for it. In fact, saying that, maybe if they just, worked a little bit harder or something like that, so basically, a good employee, works for $2 an hour, 8 days a week, kind of literally put out statements like that, basically just talking about what a bruising company it is to work at. So yeah, it's natural that they would be the first ones to say, and they are a restaurant and bar chain, so there's actually a legitimate reason I could imagine for them saying that we want all staff to be vaccinated. But yeah, in terms of being the brave company willing to bully their employees first, a certified black company like Watami is kind of not too surprising there. So that's a thing that's happened with COVID-19. The other things that are happening are, in Tokyo, the hospital system, a lot of stories this week, distressing stories actually, which I have not put into here, but to give you the quick summary, the medical system in terms of coping with COVID-19 is now collapsed. It's gone. There is no capacity. There are now lots of cases where, oops, what's happening there? Don't want a video. Oops, sorry about that. Oh, what's happened there? Oh, it's back. There was a case where Well, now it's very common that ambulances, hospitals are not obliged to take patients. So, often ambulances will drive around for hours looking for, even in normal times, they drive around for hours. Sometimes they have 20, 30 rejections from hospitals until they can place a patient. But now there are cases, 60% of cases where people need to be hospitalized for COVID-19 in emergency cases. They cannot find beds that will take them. It's not that all the beds in hospitals are being taken up. Most hospitals reserve certain numbers of beds because they have to have them isolated. They have to have 24-hour sort of staff looking after them. There's lots of restrictions or considerations of that. So, some hospitals are deliberately not having any hospital beds because it takes up their, for COVID-19, because it takes up their other business that they make money from. It takes all the resources of their staff and whatnot. But for the hospital beds available in Tokyo, they are now all taken up, and the hospitals are not taking any more people. So even people who would normally be on respirators, for example, ventilators, they're being put on this at home and being told to look after themselves at home. And there are now multiple cases of people dying while at home when they suddenly get worse. But frankly, these are people who are in normal situations would absolutely be in hospital to begin with, and they're being supervised there. So really dangerous to have it right now. People in their 40s, people in their 30s are dying at home. Plus other cases, another case during the week where a mother who was pregnant woman who had COVID-19 basically needed to go to hospital for sort of having birth troubles. And because she had COVID-19, they wouldn't accept her in any of the hospitals. And so they forced her to give a sort of birth at home with the ambulance staff, and the baby died. And that caused a lot of fuss. So basically, there's just, if you get COVID-19 right now, and there's cases of people in their 20s and 30s like now dying at home while they're waiting, there's just no hospital beds for you if you get COVID-19 right now. I think the media is playing this up deliberately to scare people because, frankly, people have sort of lost their motivation to comply with requests and not go out. And if they want to do that, I think it's working. I mean, it's gotten so bad, I'm just kind of not following it anymore. The system in Tokyo is basically the chief medical advisor, Dr. Omi, that I just showed you. He basically has said to the he's appealing to Tokyo hospitals to allocate more COVID beds, and to not try to reserve an additional capacity for other sort of, elective surgeries and stuff like that, pointing out that the system in Tokyo is just not coping right now, and they need hospitals to be more cooperative. They can't force the hospitals to take more patients. This is the thing. So, right now, I mean, if you need to be scared, this is the reason. If you catch COVID-19 right now, it's highly likely that you will not get hospital treatment for it, even if you need it to live. And so that's going to, that makes the prospect of dealing with it, even if you're younger. And the fact that, of course, Delta is so scary and that there are people in 40s and 30s dying from it is also pretty terrifying. So that's what's happening in Tokyo right now. The other thing is, of course, we're having the Paralympics tomorrow. I saw some discussion about, I totally failed at getting through 3 topics in the first, before 11 o'clock, but that's okay. I'll talk about this for a little bit as well. There is a proposal right now. Tokyo is considering using all the Paralympics facilities for emergency COVID-19 treatment after the Paralympics are done on September 5. That's a good thing. I think they should be doing it now, not after the Paralympics. It's 2 weeks. They've just decided that even though the governor of Tokyo is like begging people to please, the medical system has collapsed. We can't even put people in hospitals. Please stay at home and don't go out and don't have gatherings. She still is insisting it's safe to do the Paralympics. And you know what? I mean, it probably is. They did a pretty good job at keeping the Olympics isolated and secure and having it, but it's also taking resources. There are going to be doctors and medical facilities supporting this. And again, if there was any time that was appropriate to cancel, surely it's now. It's too late now. All the athletes are here. The opening ceremony is tomorrow. And again, like with the Olympics, total mistake that they're doing it. But to the volunteers and to the Olympics, all the best with it. I hope it goes smoothly. I hope it's over as fast as possible. The other big debate is that there are the Olympic Committee and apparently even the school boards of Tokyo are talking about forcing 240,000 kids to go and view the Paralympics. Again, some people saying, like, how can you force kids to go to what might be a cluster, what might become a cluster in the audience there, especially in the current circumstances? You're telling people not to travel, and yet you're also talking about forcing 240,000 school kids to go and attend, these matches. I'm a little bit torn about it. I've seen people on Twitter talking about how this is just like the Nazis using children in, Olympic propaganda and propaganda in general, and this is just Tokyo. It's like the Olympics are a big fascist event, and Tokyo's a big fascist government, and they're using kids for propaganda. I don't take that line at all. Remember in 1936, if they had a Paralympics, the Nazis would have been probably, gassing and murdering the athletes. The whole point of the Paralympics, I mean, the fact that, for example, they've found the accessibility issues already that, in many hotels and Olympic facilities and so on, and taxis and transport, everything that the Paralympians are using, they're suddenly realizing how, ableist everything is in Tokyo, how inaccessible it is. If you've ever had a broken leg in Tokyo, just getting around on crutches for a week and realizing how, it's come a long way, but still basically, like, there'll be things like there'll be an escalator that will go halfway up a stairwell, but then you've got to walk up the other half of the stairs and there's no way around it. And you've got people with wheelchairs get stuck halfway up to chairs because of badly designed train stations and so on. If there was no bubble, the Paralympics would actually be shining a light on all of this, because we'd have all of the tourism and the athletes and everything in terms of how the city is not friendly for, people with disabilities would be shown a light on. It is being shown for the facilities, and they're rapidly sort of upgrading all the infrastructure to be able to handle that. But the other point, of course, is that all this happens in Japan because disabled people with disabilities are just, when people, it's like we had the big murder thing in Sagamihara. People with disabilities are often farmed out to care homes and hidden. They're a source of shame. There's sort of, even Hansen's disease, there was, leprosy. There was a cure for this, decades ago, and yet until a couple of decades ago, people with it were forced into institutions still and isolated. They were forcibly sterilized. Intellectually disabled, handicapped people were sterilized up until just a couple of decades ago in Japan. Japan has an appalling record with, disabled people, and this is partly because they are hidden and gets kept quiet, and people are embarrassed about it. So kids are completely ignorant about disabled people, and they become ableist. They become discriminatory towards, either ignorant of, and they build train stations without access for disabled people. 15% of the population, remember. Or, worse, they even become like, the people who, like the murderer, in Sagamihara and places like that. So I do see, in normal circumstances, I fill the stadiums up with kids. Show how cool, people with disabilities are, show how normal they are, show how, they face sort of struggles, and yet they can still sort of do cool things and have them sort of, have those memories. And when they become adults and policy planners and whatnot, have them, think of that and be that voice that, reminds everybody that of the need to be considerate towards those people. I don't look at this as a fascist or a Nazi thing at all. I've seen that criticism. If in any other circumstance, I actually think the Paralympics are a great thing, and great thing to have kids in there, but not during a freaking Delta, pandemic of coronavirus. There's priorities. I wouldn't want my kid to get long corona or die from, it, as much as I think it would be beneficial for, him to see, and experience the Paralympics. So this is it. I think the Paralympics are a worthy event. But again, they just shouldn't be doing it right now. It's moronic, but it's happening. So it's happening from tomorrow. All the best to the athletes and the people hosting it. But again, to Koike and the government just ramming this through. And on top of this, still talking about forcing kids to go and attend. There needs to be accountability for that. They need to be voted out. Clearly they're not prioritizing the right things, and they're not being consistent to the people that, how can voters take them seriously on, acting responsibly voluntarily to the pandemic when they're making irresponsible, decisions themselves that put everyone in danger in Tokyo. So that's where I'm at with that. Into the topics. That's the coronavirus latest, as well as Paralympics, I guess. Great to see Bio McNeil there in the comments. Great to have you here, sir. Trying to go back. Where's the last comment that I responded to? I think it's over there. So we've got Odie Jr. saying hello. Great to have you in the comments. We've got Ev Kelly. Good to see you. Good evening. It's leveled out in Tokyo, but testing is down, and everyone's still out for a bond. So I think we can have a bit of a spike when they all get back. I think EDIR, I thought they killed those contracts under the Abe government. No, they did not. In fact, now it's the main way most people are employed in Japan. So yeah, Dan H, what can you tell me about NTT Data and their business culture? Your father is joining that company next year, an upper management team in the UK. Well, that's interesting. Well, I don't know that I can comment too much. I've worked with NTT Data a lot. They are, one of the many NTT companies, and each entity company, Entity Communications, Entity.com, Entity Docomo, they all, Entity East, West, they all have actually, I've heard that they actually don't like each other at all. So first thing is, don't make the mistake of thinking Entity Data is another, like the other Entity Communications, for example. NTT Data, I would say, is very much like Hitachi or NEC or Fujitsu. It's I think it is one of the top 4 system integrators in Japan. They're very much like they're like a PwC or Accenture or, sort of a big systems integration company. They do a lot of work. They're not incompetent like some other companies in Japan I could name that I think are. They seem pretty professional. They own a hell of a lot of infrastructure. They own data centers and so on. They run cloud. They do a lot of big projects. So I don't have, in terms of the company culture, I mean, it is an NTT child, so I still think it will have that conservative Japanese culture and that mass SI. I probably think it would be a better place to work than Fujitsu or NEC or Hitachi, just in terms of, it depends on the role he has there as well, I guess. But NTT Data was formed more recently, has a bit more of a modern sort of an image, not so much of a, thousands of bullied SIs sort of an image. But, it is a very Japanese company. So I don't know. I don't know how it would be in the UK because a lot of Japanese companies allow a lot of autonomy to their overseas operations. They don't even try to run them. And it may be that NTT Data in the UK just operates like a UK company. But I don't know. I don't know that. So that's about the best I can say. I work with them all the time, and they are a relatively solid company. I have a generally positive image of them, if somewhat they're still institution. But that's congrats to your dad on that. And I think it'd be a really interesting opportunity working for them in the UK. Burning down the house, says Sergeant Bilko. Yes. Lysander 45. You arrived in Japan just in time, I see. Thank God you're fully vaccinated. Amen. Yeah, you don't want to be messing with the medical system right now. This is the thing. Listen, I know that the all the stuff is like remember it's voluntary and your body's a temple and all of that. But my PSA is that if you don't get vaccinated, you're a moron. And if you're listening to these people who are putting out all of these sort of pro-hesitancy sort of things. I mean, listen, there are some limited legitimate reasons. If you're, religious, I don't really consider that to be a legitimate reason, but sure, I'm not going to force someone to change their religion. But if it's, some people actually get like anaphylactic shock, or they have like a track record of that with certain things that are triggered by things that are in the vaccines, check with your doctor. Don't just assume. But, if there's a legitimate medical reason, sure. But short of that, I think you're irresponsible. It's not just your own health, it's everyone around you. But as well, for a day of fever, of 37.5 degree fever that I got after the second shot, compared to, remember, COVID, it messes with your organs. It'll make, young women, even people who don't even have serious cases, who have light cases, you lose your sense of taste. You can have your hair fall out. You can have, your kidneys and your liver get all messed up. People suffer brain cognitive. They lose their memories. They have their brains get messed up. It gets everywhere. It gets in and it messes up your organs. Your lungs get messed up forever. It's like, you'll have the lungs of a heavy smoker. That, or freaking like a quick jab, which, remember, you get jabs like freaking all the time. You get the flu. I get the flu shot every year. If you're afraid that, it's experimental or something like that, well, just ask someone who's taken it. Well, lots of people have taken it, and it's safe, and yeah, it's just ridiculously. If for people who need the reminder, you definitely. And the fact is, it now looks like with Delta, it's not really a case of avoiding it anymore. It's not even going to give you immunity from it. It's just going to mean the forkhands, it's not going to be able to, its forks, its little spikes are not going to be able to attach to you. It's going to flow through your body and you're going to get a mild case of it, but you're not going to end up one of those people needing, in the back of an ambulance that can't find a hospital when you're going to die. That's the difference. That's what you get the shot for. It's not to be immune from it. It doesn't give you immunity. It just means that it'll pass through you and it won't give you as severe symptoms. that's a good reason to get it. I think that's the only way we're going to finish this pandemic, frankly, is now it looks like everyone's going to get it at some point. That's pretty much how bad Delta looks. Even New Zealand and Australia, the strategy of trying to keep it at zero, I think it looks like it's out the door. So yeah, get vaccinated. God, please don't even hesitate. Yeah, Japan's health system doesn't really sound that great. AV84K, Japan has a good health system in general. It's just, in some ways, it looks after every patient like too well. That's part of the thing. The resources that they're not doing a triage situation with these. They are putting everybody into isolated sort of beds and, having full-time staff attached to them. But that way of handling it in Tokyo it's collapsing. Everywhere else at the moment is still not at that point, although Okinawa, Osaka, they are having similar problems. So right now I would not want to be, the whole time I've been in Japan I've been very happy with the medical system here, but right now I wouldn't want to be at its mercy. And it's another thing, it's not just a matter of getting vaccinated, it's on top of that, just for a couple of weeks, just putting off those sort of barbecues and, putting off the things that you would do that might just put you, increase the risk of getting it, right? Things will come down again if people do that, but they're not right now. That's the other thing, of course. So, they're obvious statements, but that's clearly, to me, what it's all about. Good night, Andrew Mulboy. Have a good night there. And good evening, Iraq. Good to see Iraq 299 is saying thanks to the volunteers for the Paralympics and the athletes and all the best with that, even though we shouldn't be doing it. But thank heavens they're talking about using the facilities for overflow for medical care for COVID patients after the Paralympics, which I hope happens. Next story. I've talked about this the last couple of weeks, but there's been some more movements of it, and so I want to share it again. This is the story of Wishma Sandamali, the Sri Lankan language student who was detained for overstaying her visa after she went to the police for help for domestic violence. They put her into immigration detention. She was held there. She had medical issues which worsened. However, the guards in detention denied her even the right to go and be examined by someone for it. And as she declined with a video on her for days, she eventually died in detention, being denied medical attention the entire time. Watching someone die when they are telling you, when it's clear that they have a medical condition and withholding that medical care, and you are locking them up, you're in control of their ability to get medical treatment, and it's clearly foreseeable that withholding medical treatment could result in this person dying. That is manslaughter. That is basically doing something that you can, that isn't necessarily murder. You're not deliberately trying to kill a person, but you're doing something that you are knowingly and deliberately doing something that you should reasonably foresee will result in the person dying. That's what manslaughter is. Japan doesn't have specifically manslaughter, but clearly this is a homicide case. And yet it still is being treated by the Immigration Department, the Justice Ministry, as an administrative whoopsie. Oh yeah, we should have showed it to a doctor. Yeah, we'll put that in the manual and try not to let it happen again. Of course, the thing is, not only was she being watched by the guards who were basically just dismissing and making, apparently making fun and sort of dismissing her this entire time until she died, but there was also, she was under video surveillance the entire time, and there were 2.5 days of video footage of her medical condition on camera declining, the same view that probably the guards and the people running the detention facility had. And so when the family found out that there was security footage and they asked for it to be disclosed, I've told the story already, the Justice Ministry said, oh no, the footage is too disturbing, we can't release it. Basically, after the family came to Japan and lobbied for weeks and weeks and weeks, they finally got showed a 2-hour summary, which they could only stomach an hour of, but they were shown a video basically showing sort of a cut down sort of highlights, I suppose, of 2.5 days of video coverage of her declining and dying. And again, now press is asking for the video to be released, and the Justice Ministry is saying no, they don't want to release the video. I guess not. They don't want to show a video of them killing somebody. They say that it's too disturbing to show the video, but it wasn't too disturbing for the detention center guards. They're saying this is an administrative whoopsie where, where the guards were able to see this person, the same as the video cameras, and they're saying that, and they made a misjudgment. But, somehow it's so disturbing that they can't share the video of it. It's basically a government department covering up a murder that they did. I mean, that's what it is. It's a homicide. To add insult to injury, so when a media group asked for documentation relating to the investigation of the case, they asked for disclosure of documents relating to the autopsy and the handling of her case. They won a court that basically they were blocked by the Justice Ministry, so they went for a Freedom of Information request procedure, which was approved, and 15,000 pages were released. Apparently they charged basically about $1,500 to the media company for the administrative cost of releasing it, and the pages are there. They are almost entirely blacked out, censored, the entire thing. I mean, it's almost like the $1,500 would have been for the toner for printing out all of the pages, completely blacked out. So I mean, and the irony behind this all is that this is the Justice Ministry. So you'd ask, why are the police not investigating this? And someone pointed out to me on Twitter, well, this is the Justice Ministry. They'd have to be investigating themselves when they do the investigating. And yet they're the ones who murdered someone, and they're the ones hiding the evidence of it and refusing to cooperate with, with legal public disclosure requests. So in a way, I mean, this response is just so outrageous. On top of not disclosing the video, the fact that they respond like this to a court-ordered information disclosure request, for the fact that, like I say, remember, this was a language student who overstayed a visa. Not good, but again, they made the decision to put her into their custody and to detain her, and she was under lock and key, at their mercy, and with a medical condition that they denied her medical access to, and they allowed her to die. This is a murder case. I don't see it. Well, at least it's a manslaughter case. And it's crazy to me that there is, and this response, by the way, generated so much outrage. It's the old Streisand thing. Maybe they thought they were being clever doing this, and I think this is going to cause more backlash. It's not going to solve anything. So I think it was a foolish move by the Justice Ministry to respond like this. It really is completely outrageous. And remember, as foreigners, even myself as a permanent resident, this can happen to, you get the sense that they were sort of hoping that the family wouldn't come and this would be a foreigner and they could sort of quietly sort of manage it after. Well, these are people, just the same as, this is the one crime that foreigners can do that Japanese can't. And it's frankly all immigration, administrative issues that result in, foreign crime rates being reported as high. If you take out the immigration statistics, crime by foreigners on Japan is the same or less than rates for the general populace. But this could happen to anybody, and it's scary, and again, it shows a real flaw in the operation of justice in this country, that this isn't even being investigated. So that happened this week, and pretty awful. We'll see. I'll keep posted on updates, but that was something that happened. Comments there, Quinn Rankid. Are the guards being charged? No, they are not. Is there a rule that the government had to disclose evidence to the defense? Well, they're not being prosecuted. So, because again, it's the Justice Ministry that did this. The same ministry that oversees the prosecutors runs the detention center. They have decided not to investigate, not even to investigate. There's not even an investigation into this. There's just an internal, hey, let's not let it happen again report, which has been completely censored. So, no, there's nothing happening there. There was a Freedom of Information request for the internal review of how the detainee was allowed to die. That's it. All the 1,500 blanked out pages. So pretty atrocious. Can there be a private prosecution in Japan? I don't know. There can be a civil case. And again, I'm sure the Justice Ministry is just hoping that the family will leave, and not do that. There should be. Wrongful death at least. You can imagine in America there would be a million different ways to sue this. It's not as easy to do that sort of thing in Japan. But agreed by it. It's awful. Not that much, Tess. Good to have you. Better late than never. Good to see you. Another story. So that was a bit of a downer. This one's also a downer, but it's kind of, it's fascinating. This is history. I think I mentioned on the last show that Unseen Japan was doing these weekly episodes on the Japanese Red Army. And it's kind of funny. I have this general thing with the Red Army that although that, you talk about why students are apathetic about politics, and this is one reason why, that when they were into politics, things got too crazy. There were assassinations, bombs, hijackings. A case in the episode last week where like they just basically murdered each other, through internal purges. And then the people who survived the internal purges went and took over a lodge in Karuizawa in Nagano Prefecture, where they shot a couple of police officers. They held a hostage for something like a week. Famous case, the sort of last holdout of the Japanese remnants of the United Red Army faction. And nearly all of them got the death penalty. Some of them, in spite of getting the death penalty in like the 1970s, they are still on death row. They're still taken to death row every couple of days. And they will not be told the time that they are executed. It's deemed cruel by Amnesty International. But if you find out what these people, watch this and just see what terrible human beings these people were. I mean, the very nicest thing I can say about them is that they were assholes. You watch it and it's just so infuriating. The arrogance of these people, and that they thought that they were sort of, in this sort of ideological, change the world, violence is okay, including killing each other, killing police, killing anyone, There's more episodes. There's going to be 5 episodes. The one next week is going to be the group that went to Lebanon and did a whole bunch of horrible stuff in the Middle East. Just really, again, Unseen Japan, great Twitter account, great YouTube channel. They make some really great original documentary and historic content. And this stuff still reverberates in Japan today. When you talk about why Japanese are so apathetic about politics, this is a big part of why. It's an important part of the historic background as to why Japan is the way it is right now. Why did the LDP just become like an unopposed government for so long? It's because, Japan had more active opposition. The communists nearly got elected in the 50s and 60s. But this destroyed all of that. It just made politics just completely unpalatable in Japan. So, again, another really well done episode. It's something worth learning about anyway. So highly recommended watching. Quinn Rankid, they're hoping the family will leave. Yeah, absolutely. I wonder if they're thinking of putting them in detention. I doubt they would be going that far. They have done like an apology, again, clearly aimed at trying to wrap the whole thing up. But, how does the lack of political activism in Japan now speak to the quality of politicians that Japan has? Well, the irony is that young Japanese today, and this is a trend not just in Japan but other countries, but where young people generally, where they are activists, they're almost more inclined to be conservative activists than left-wing activists. Traditionally in the past, young activists are associated with leftist causes, and, that general sort of leftist idealism that society can be shaped and changed. People now in Japan, but not just in Japan, there is a sort of conservative kind of thing where people it's so reinforced that there's no point even trying to manipulate society. Partly because leftist ideology has been so discredited, but also just partly out of apathy. It's almost like apathy is an ideology that they want to be hands off. I think the failures of other ideologies and the discrediting of some of the political parties in Japan plays into it. But the LDP is a party that banks on apathy and on having terrible candidates. I mean, this is a party where Taro Aso, when he was prime minister, was like encouraging voters not to vote if they weren't sure who to vote for, because they rely on entrenched 80-year-old voters who remember the Red Army. Voting for them consistently because they're afraid that every other party is going to be the return of the Red Army, literally. And they're the only people that they want to have voting, and they want to discourage everyone else. So it's pretty awful, frankly. But the murder in that doc is really nothing special when you compare it to other regimes of similar tyrannical bent. Your favorite? Oh, sorry, I just realized I skipped a couple there. My favorite was the woman who justified her infidelity because communism. I mean, and indeed, I mean, again, the purges that you have, I mean, very, very much like the what you read about the Cultural Revolution in China, very much what you read about the purges in Russia, and indeed what you hear about in fascist countries. Although I suppose the thing with fascism is that they tend to be less tied up in the actual ideology, or at least less pretentious about it. But they all end up doing the same things. So that's a thing. Kind of Captain Obvious flew into Nikkei, but just cover the story how Yeah, there's a good story in Nikkei talking about how not just the fact that foreign workers can't get in at the moment are still being shut out, and of course, given the pressure on the elderly care and the medical system in Japan, it's really telling that a lot of places who have been expecting to be able to get Indonesian and Philippine nurses and nursing staff to be able to support elderly homes and hospitals have not been able to get those in, and those, as a result, those homes basically remain unable to staff to look after all of the people that they're caring for, as elderly are growing like crazy, and with all the, of course, the pandemic at the moment, the need for extra staff to deal with that. The other problem being, of course, that in spite of the desperate need for care workers in Japan, it pays, minimum wage or below, and it's, on top of that, on top of being low paying, it's basically a job entirely looking after elderly people like babies sometimes, right? So, it's not work that a lot of people would do even for good money, but it's not even good money. So the reliance on having people from overseas to do this is, it's causing these systems to come under a lot of strain, and they're speaking up about, hey, how about exemptions to start letting these people in first, because, Japan's health system's at risk. Nikkei points out that, however, the problem again here is that apart from the fact that the trainee system, which requires passing of Japanese medical exams as well as Japanese language exams, was expected in the first 5 years of operation to bring up to 60,000 nurses into Japan, and only 2,000 have been able to make it, or at least qualify. And of those, now there's hundreds who are waiting. They have their certificate of eligibility and they're waiting to come to Japan, but they can't get in because of the travel restrictions, which I'm hoping are going to get lifted after the Paralympics, but we'll see. But again, why are we holding this up for the Paralympics when we shouldn't be holding it in the first place? What Nikkei talks about, however, is that for all of that, the other problem, of course, is that Japan's apprentice worker scheme is also generating so much negative publicity about Japan, as well as the fact that you have countries like Korea and China becoming more wealthy, and now they're starting to compete with Japan for wanting to attract Vietnamese, Philippine, and Indonesian workers, the skilled workers from those countries to come and be able to enhance the economy for skilled jobs. So, and there's problems on both sides. There's problems in Japan of sexual harassment, sexual abuse, bullying, with underpaying and so on, and the fact that people on the apprenticeship scheme are not able to change their work when they're here. So they're effectively they're like old-fashioned indentured labor, and indentured labor is a euphemism for slavery. Some people don't like me saying slavery for indentured labor because they say it's sacred and it belongs to the American experience, which of course was a particularly nasty version of slavery. But slavery exists today. It exists very much in the old sense. It still exists in, like owning people as property still happens in the Middle East, and there are parts of the world. Sudan still has a problem with this. Human trafficking is a problem in almost every country in the world. Wealthy countries are normally where they are sent to. And indentured labor, basically having people being debt slaves and controlling them through, literally like restricting their movements, locking them in their dorms, taking their passports, not giving them money to force them to work for you for free. I mean, you can call it modern slavery, but that's what it is, and it happens right now, and it's happening under Japan's apprentice visa scheme, and it's being called out. Japan is not doing anything about it. Nikkei's pointing that out. Where it's happening, there's not enough protection for the workers, as well as the fact there are literally the human trafficking introduction agents that are putting these people into debt and setting up the sort of indentured nature of the system back in their home countries, and that's not being policed either. So some good awareness from Nikkei calling out to the government that it needs to address this, but the government hasn't shown. Again, the damn Justice Ministry and their part, the only enforcement that they're doing around this is not against the abusive employers or the human traffickers. It's against the people who run away from sexual abuse and from this sort of, from these slavery conditions. It's pretty awful. Very, again, a modern parallel to the history of, the only crime, the only crime that was committed against a slave in the old day was, or involving a slave was when they ran away, and then you'd have the patrols that would round them up. Same thing here. So again, at least calling those out as problems that not only, just the fact that they're problems that, Nikkei's putting it from an economic perspective that, the economy is going to be ruined because the economy depends on these people to look after Japan, and we're scaring them away because we're abusing them too much. So they're linking it to self-interest. You shouldn't need to do self-interest as a motivator to not enslave people, but if that's what gets you going, go Nikkei, don't enslave people because it means that you might be the one changing grandpa's diapers rather than someone who's paid to do it. So yeah, that's the second to last story. And the last story that we have tonight is a little bit of debate going around about this. A lot of media attention going around this week about blue hydrogen. And again, not Japan related, although Japan is really heavily investing in Australian blue hydrogen. Just a quick thing on this as well. So many people, I've seen so many comments that I get a little bit wound up about this, where, people see it as hydrogen cars versus EV cars, and people love their Teslas. And understandably, they're great cars. And you have people being pro and, like hydrogen cars are not as efficient as battery cars, and, we don't need those, and, we don't have the infrastructure, and why is Japan going down this path? And I've always been, look, all the things are good. It's clear, again, the IPCC has made it absolutely clear. We are now in a runaway greenhouse effect, and anything we can do to move towards decarbonization, including nuclear power, including wind, solar, everything. The idea that, one technology is good and all the other ones are bad, like their sports teams. No, we should be trying to develop all the technologies and finding the best solution for every single niche, for this. And what hydrogen offers is an opportunity that I find really interesting, and the reason that governments are getting into it is that it is most hydrogen in this planet is not, hydrogen doesn't float around in the air. It's not, you can't just get it in this pure form. It exists mainly in two things: the ocean, hydrogen H2O, the H2, the two hydrogen atoms, and water. But it's actually more dense, and it's much more packed into hydrocarbons, literally the fossil fuels that we burn. Natural gas, coal, oil, all that stuff is packed full of hydrogen. And for the energy companies that face sort of ruin, and for the economy that needs to figure out how to convert, you can use hydrogen both for combustion and for batteries. It's a great energy source. But of course, you've got gray hydrogen is where you just burn off all the carbon and you extract the hydrogen. That's the worst way to get hydrogen. And that is basically, like burning fossil fuels to get hydrogen. So that's totally dirty and that's not cool, but that's the easiest way to get hydrogen. The second easiest way to get it is to separate the hydrogen from the carbon, burn off the carbon, but to capture the carbon and not let it escape anywhere and bury it underground. And that's what right now governments are investing a lot of money in. They're putting a lot of money in trying to capture all of the carbon byproduct from separating hydrogen from natural gas and coal and so on. And this is what they're investing in Australia. The idea being that you can use the existing liquid petroleum gas ships, pipelines, oil and gas pipelines, and you can switch those to hydrogen relatively easily. And that's it. They're trying to convert the existing energy infrastructure technology, and once you can replace those oil refineries and gas tanks with huge hydrogen tanks, and you can use the same trucks and the same petrol station infrastructure, you can overnight switch it so that basically you can have cars, electric cars that run on and trucks. They can travel longer distances than cars with batteries, and you can move this energy around and basically convert to a cleaner form of energy that doesn't have any emissions. So blue makes sense. Green is the ideal. That's when you get it from water. But the point is you can only get it from water by using electrolysis. You need to put electricity into the water to get the fuel out, which you then use for electricity. So it's not very efficient. But you can get it in a completely emissions-free way, but it's just not very efficient, which makes it more expensive. But that's where we should go. And what I love about hydrogen is I watch lots of futurism channels and science fiction stuff. Hydrogen is the most plentiful substance in the universe. You can get it, anywhere you go in the solar system, you can find a ton. Normally you have to extract it, but there are some planets and so on where hydrogen does float around. Long term, as a source of energy, hydrogen is the best way to go. And to the extent that we're going to one day be getting this stuff off the planet, as well as solar and probably fusion energy and whatnot, it strikes me as any step towards setting up everything to be able to work on hydrogen, and then working as hard as you can to bring down the cost of green hydrogen, and improving the technology all the time for blue hydrogen so that you can extract it that way without the carbon emissions. These are all good things that we should be working on. The bad publicity about blue hydrogen is that what's really happening right now is governments and the oil industry are suddenly saying, oh, we're green now. We're giving you pure environmentally friendly hydrogen instead of oil and gas. And we're doing it because it's blue and we promise to capture all the carbon. And of course, what's coming out is that a few reports have found that actually the carbon capture technology doesn't work very well. And in fact, the separation process actually causes more fossil fuels to be burned off and more emissions than just exporting the coal or oil as is. It's actually, there's some people pointing out that, using blue hydrogen extracted or separated from natural gas actually causes more carbon emissions than just burning the natural gas straight. Which is pretty damning, and there's lots of reasons why that doesn't work, and they're mainly limitations around the technology. If you ask me, yeah, I mean, and the fact that the oil industry, one, it's taking attention away from investment in green hydrogen, which is where we should be going. The other thing is that it looks like a really nice way to greenwash. It gives a way for the oil companies to be able to sort of keep doing what they're doing and making money. And they're sort of taking over the discussion and the promotion of hydrogen, and that's taking attention away from other green tech. And so you've got a lot of lobbyists and a lot of people from hydrogen groups suddenly feeling like, okay, this is like tobacco has come and taken over the health food lobby. And that's understandable. My personal opinion on this is that I think, in the end of the day, if this helps us to convert the economy over, I still think we should be investing in all the things, and we shouldn't just look at anything as purely good or bad. I still think it's exciting, the idea that we can convert this over and that we can have everything running on fuel cells soon. And then, of course, the focus will have to switch to, okay, how do you get that hydrogen? Do you get it from the coal mine near the port, where you stack it, or do you get it from the ocean and electrolysis? And, which you can have PV. Getting the hydrogen out, for a place like Australia, it's a perfectly good solution. So I don't know. I'm sort of like, there's so many people sort of going around, oh, I knew it, hydrogen is evil. It's not evil. I mean, the technology is not developed, and, sure, it's not good to see oil companies like greenwashing or abusing this, and everyone has to be accountable. But I think everyone needs to be really, really open-minded. There was another case, actually, I think this week, where there was a successful laser-controlled, laser-contained fusion experiment. It only went for like a millionth of a second. But yeah, the biggest problem with fusion is the temperatures are so high that, they can't contain, although the energy is like, that's the best way to get energy out of atoms, they can't contain it very, very well. And they're trying to figure out a good way to set up a reactor for it. But this laser containment thing worked last week, and that's a big deal, for getting that to work. So, the energy problem is still, still there. But I'm always an optimist. And to me, this is something that I care about. By the way, there was a great episode of JJ Walsh's podcast with a Japan renewable energy expert talking about sort of just generally getting renewable power and stuff in Japan. That still is a great podcast. Every week she's so prolific with videos, but that was a good episode. I don't have a link for it in here, but I remind everyone, go and check that out if you're interested in this sort of thing. That's all the topics from me tonight. We did get through just over an hour, but yeah, cold fusion is the way to go. It would be indeed if we could do it. Migs Vim. Good to have you here in the comments. Hey everyone, that's really it. Coming back, Tesla cars have crap quality. Yes, the build quality is terrible, but the played videos I do find pretty compelling. I would like to drive one. What happened to all the talk about robots taking care of the elderly? I think people are always thinking about that, but obviously it's got a long way to go. But again, if Japan treats their human beings that come to Japan like Wishma Sandamali or like these other apprentice workers, they're not going to have any choice. If they treat them like robots, they're not going to have any choice but to use robots. People won't come anymore. So yeah, I haven't heard much on that lately, but there you go. The J Vlog, good to see you, by the way. Hey, good to see you. Everybody, thank you again for joining me, keeping me company every week. I do appreciate your comments. I appreciate you joining me, letting me talk about all of this stuff and just share with you my thoughts. And remember, if you like the show, please like. It does help. If you haven't subscribed, subscribe. I do appreciate that. Make sure I'm basically here 10:30 p.m. Japan Standard Time every week. Same time, same place, same channel. Yeah, green probably. I see so many solar panels on houses here, more than in the US. Zenak, that's an interesting point. This is something that JJ Walsh's channel was talking about the other day, that apparently there are new building codes coming in that are going to mandate solar panels on roofs of all new buildings in Japan. So, they are pretty going full on that. And again, it's wonderful, the idea that you could have batteries that could basically capture excess production and that you could use all of that on the grid. Or you could actually even generate, green hydrogen locally with excess generation from panels and so on. And you can sell back to the grid with that stuff. So there's lots of really exciting stuff happening now with even just attaching to your home that you can actually make money from it. So yeah. Blue hydrogen leaves byproduct. Well, essentially, blue hydrogen is hydrogen that's extracted from dirty fossil fuels, but where the dirty parts are captured and not allowed to go into the environment. But that's the debate about how well that works. If they don't capture it, it's grey. If they do capture it, it's blue. And if they don't cause any nasties in the first place, it's green. That's what the color scheme is. AV84K, did I see the news about US withdrawal from Afghanistan? Yes, I did. Obviously, I'm not qualified to talk about Afghanistan. I have thoughts about Afghanistan, but they're not really qualified thoughts to say about Afghanistan. In the end of the day, I think the biggest problem is, look, Japan, I see it from the American side. It's one of the few things I agreed with Trump, saying that they were going to pull out, and Biden followed through because he also knew that in the end of the day, the world relies on America to kind of go and do this sort of dirty work, and everyone condemns America while it does it. But in the end of the day, America was in Afghanistan for twice as long as the Soviets, and people say, well, they have tens of thousands of troops in Okinawa and Germany, but they're not fighting wars in Okinawa and Germany. They were militarily occupied. The fact that the Taliban took over, as they are leaving, shows again that they were sort of even if it was supporting the majority of people in the country, which I'd like to think it was, and it was allowing the UN to do activities to support development and support women and so on there. And, in the end of the day, the country would not have been in that state for that time if it weren't for Americans dying regularly and basically being in a war there. And what obligation does America to have to be in wars in Afghanistan forever? And this reflects also the fact that America didn't have a plan when it went into Afghanistan in the first place. It went there to get Al-Qaeda, to get bin Laden. It got bin Laden eventually in freaking Pakistan. There was a legitimate reason to go there, to go get the people who attacked America. The Taliban did not attack America, by the way. The Taliban, not nice people, bunch of assholes, but they didn't attack America. They were just, the home base, because essentially they had a lawless country of Al-Qaeda. But there was never any specific need. It was just sort of like the idea that they had to fight the Taliban and take over Afghanistan and make it democratic kind of became something that happened after. And again, it's just something that is like South Vietnam. It didn't, without the Americans there, it just didn't take. So, in the end of the day, the Brits tried to do it. The Soviets tried to run Afghanistan and modernize it and so on. And now that the Americans have tried it and they've sort of failed. And on the one, I don't know that it was a popular thing against the Americans. It was just that, why do Americans have to be there dying? And America being criticized for it by foreign powers when America was really the one providing all the, all the protection there. I don't know. I wouldn't want to be in the American military just getting criticized by everybody, really, when they do disproportionately pull their weight. These were legitimate points. I don't think it has any implications for the security of Japan. It's a totally different situation here with America. I think it'll keep up to its obligations here. I think the question is, why does America need to be in unending wars, killing and shooting people in their home countries and other parts of the world? It made sense when Al-Qaeda was in Afghanistan, but that really, hasn't been the case for a long time. It's like Somalia, and again, leaving Somalia was ugly, but in the end of the day, America has to decide how long is it willing to invest the lives of its people to help out other countries with their internal problems. I think it's admirable that they tried what they tried with Afghanistan, but yeah, and I can't criticize them. I can't fault them for leaving. It is chaotic, and you can say it should have been better managed, but I don't know that they could have managed it any better. So yeah, it's pretty awful. What I do hope is that, particularly, all the countries that are feeling like America's done the wrong thing, great, open your borders and accept Afghan refugees. Everybody should be trying to find channels to support Afghans and vulnerable people in Afghanistan to get the hell out of that country. And again, the idea that these are dangerous, that these refugees might be dangerous people. Again, Taliban never attacked any other countries. They never attacked America. Taliban, so even in the worst case that you have some ex-Taliban, leave as refugees, they're not actually, they're not Al-Qaeda, and Al-Qaeda's not there anymore. So the idea that, Afghan refugees might be a security risk is just ridiculous. I think it's heartbreaking what's going on there, but frankly, short of being there and constantly shooting them and being shot yourself, I think the only other option the world can really provide Afghanistan is a safe way out, and that's what I hope the world does. That's my opinion. Remember, I'm a grandchild of a refugee myself. Refugees often go on to be very productive members. Look at America. Look at the number of people who left Europe as refugees and went and, built America and built other parts of the world, places like New Zealand and so on. This is the same situation. I really hope the Afghan people get out. That's my take. Thank you for asking. China's observations about the Quint Rankid, perhaps you're qualified to comment on China's observations about the withdrawal regarding Taiwan and America saying it isn't really ready to help. Well, that's just China being a troll. China's got an interesting, I have other opinions as well. Pakistan, apart from the fact that Pakistan's totally sold out the Muslims of, Xinjiang right across the border, immediately across the border from Pakistan, including the refugees from China who've come into Pakistan, who for the Belt and Road, basically Imran Khan has sold them out. And now it looks like China's trying to do the same sort of a deal with the Taliban. Again, if the Taliban have any principles about doing right by Muslims, how can they possibly, these are the terrorists that existed in China, trained in Afghanistan under the Taliban. So it's weird to me that all of a sudden China is obviously exploiting the situation as propaganda value, and anti-US, and to make Taiwan feel like it's not going to be protected and maybe entice Taiwan to negotiate. I think that's completely, obviously bankrupt. But, the fact that China suddenly, is acting like it's friendly with the Taliban as well is sort of, it's pretty awful. But they also promised to treat women well. Well, like I say, I would say thank you very much for that assurance, and everyone who wants to leave, just come with me. That's sort of the way I think the world should deal with it. I think America, not just America, actually, Europe and a lot of the countries in Europe that are being critical of America for leaving should be throwing open their doors to hundreds of thousands of Afghan refugees, and providing them the means to get there. These people will be good, productive citizens elsewhere, particularly if they're running away, for the sort of regime that's there. That's my opinion. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. Way over time now, but thank you for asking. I do like it when people ask me questions, and I've always got something to say. So have a good week, everybody. Like if you like, subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet, and stay safe. Do not get the Rona. Christopher Luke, good to see you. Have a good week, everybody. I did not see that headline, but Quint Rankid, that is funny. It's good to be king. Good. Anyway, okay, I'll see everybody. Take care. Remember, follow me on Twitter if you, thanks very much to Erin for the moderation skills, and have a good week. Boom. Peace. Oh, and also leave a comment. I didn't see any comments about the video quality, if you prefer this to the regular webcam, but if this looks better, I'll check it out myself. I will, this does look sharper to me. So, maybe the iPhone isn't the better way to go, but I'll maybe try this again next week. See you all later. Have a good week, everybody. Stay safe. Get vaccinated. Boom.